Welcome back to Top Bins, the show bringing you all the action from England and Italy. I'm your host Matt, joined by my co-host Dom. Dom, how are you doing tonight?
Good man. First real day of spring break. I have the whole week off from work, so I'm really excited. You know, got a couple things done. Hit the gym early today. That was a nice feeling. Yeah, man, we're just feeling good. Ready for another episode. We're coming up on a year of weekly consistent episodes right now, so that's nice. A couple
Yes,
more
sir.
months.
Yes, sir. I hope everyone enjoyed their Easter. We know plenty of players did, especially if anything is to go by today's results. I think some players maybe enjoyed Pasquale a bit too much in Italy. Before we get started today, though, we got to remind you about our sponsor because this episode of Top Bins is brought to you by Bino Board. Bino is the next big tabletop game for your man cave or she shed. You should think of this game like paper football meets foosball, and you've got Bino Board. It's incredibly fun, incredibly engaging. It's a game and lifestyle brand based in Phoenix, Arizona. Bino's goal is to provide the highest quality boards and a true brand experience. Every part of their boards have been tested time and time again for the best possible playability so that every Flicker's experience is a positive one. So you know when you're buying from Bino, you're getting the good stuff only. Bring the world together with Bino and hear someone's story from the other side of the pitch. You can go to binoboard.com and use our code BINOUSP for 10% off your order, including the newly launched Team USA World Cup board and merch, because we do have the World Cup year, right? You know, we got the World Cup to look forward to. USA will be back in it, so why don't you go and get something really nice and decorative for when you're hosting your World Cup viewing parties. That's code BINO, which is BINHOUSP, for 10% off your order at binoboard.com. Dom, we're going to start in Italy,
Yeah.
where I think there's the most drama, and I think week to week we're pretty much going to be covering the top three and their results and dissecting the games just a little bit. This week again, you know, two of the Milanese clubs with really strong results, getting back on path. Napoli falling off with a draw today, but we'll start on Friday where we had Inter and Milan both playing, respectively. Inter 3, Spezia 1. Good away win from Inter. I think gets them back on the path. Spezia have been a little bit of a tricky opponent considering their place in the table. They've tripped a few teams up this season, Milan included. And it was I think a really good result from Inter. I think it was back to where we had seen their level a little bit, and I think if you're looking from their perspective, this is the type of game that they would like to be playing. These are the types of results and performances that we had been more accustomed to with them. Alexis Sanchez, really good performance from him, and Brozovic with one of the goals of the season, beautiful volley into top bins trademark, helps them secure this win.
Yeah, man. Inter's getting back. They're getting that steam rolling, a lot of momentum going. And they have the fairly easy end to the season. If you take a look at their remaining, I think like 5 games or so, they have a game in hand on Milan. So they're sitting in a nice position right now, with the games remaining to possibly win the league. They just have to keep this consistency going. And based off of this result with a tricky little team in Spezia, that's a nice confidence booster moving on for these final games.
Yeah, I think the result is obviously important, but I think really the performances had been what were really bad for Inter,
Yeah.
and where the worrying sign is not only were they drawing a lot or dropping some games you weren't accustomed to, they weren't scoring very much. La Torre gets a goal in this, a really nice one too. Really just kind of improvised finish. He flicks it towards goal and it finds its way in. Those are the types of moments that I think can give them the confidence down the stretch. And let's not forget too, they are the reigning champions. They have dealt, the core of this team has dealt with high leverage games and high pressure situations. And like you mentioned, they do have a pretty favorable end to the season. So Nico Barella, I thought was fantastic again in this game. He's been all season. He's been one of the best midfielders, if not the best midfielder in Serie A again this year, and he's really just improving every month. It seems like I'm watching him and just enjoying him play. So Inter,
Yeah.
yeah, I think they have this game in hand still. That's the big thing. It's very much in their destiny at this point. I expect both Milan clubs, though, will drop more points, in the games remaining. That's just been the way this season has gone. I think that neither of them have really strung together, 5 straight weeks of undropped points or not, slipping up at some stage. So we'll have more drama, I'm sure. But yeah, you're right to point out Inter certainly have the path. I think if you were looking at it objectively as the easier path, but
Yeah.
we know it's not always that case, right? Both of these teams have dropped to quote unquote easier opponents at times this year.
Yeah. And that's obviously the most crucial part, right? Which team is more consistent? Like you said, there's a lot of times we've seen this season with the top teams, just not being on. But it's nice to see that. Well, I use nice very sparingly here, but it's nice to see that they're guys that they can count on for goals. Are starting to score again. Lautaro has been that piece for Inter. If they want to succeed, he's got to be on the field. He's got to be scoring goals because, it's very concerning when their two starting strikers don't score goals, have, mediocre performances. They get subbed off. The two guys that get subbed on for them are the ones that score the goals. So, it's very concerning for Inter that, guys like Dzeko and Correa can't get it done. I mean, Correa, you can kind of understand because he doesn't always see game time. But with a guy like Dzeko against a team like Spezia, you expect him to at least find the back of the net once. And, he's kind of had a lackluster last few weeks. So, as long as Inter can get the guys that are scoring goals and Lautaro can keep up his consistency, Inter doesn't have anything to worry about. And that puts pressure on Milan to, get their performances with a arguably much tougher end to the season.
Yeah, it's interesting because Dzeko in the first half of the season, I thought was one of the signings of the year.
Yeah.
When you considered how well he's playing, the price that they got him, he definitely has cooled off a little bit. I think some of that is age too. I don't know that they came into the season either perhaps expecting to have to rely on him so much. I think they were hoping Correa would hit the ground a little faster. I'm sure they were hoping Sanchez maybe could have played a slightly bigger role in kind of rotation. But yeah, I also don't think it's a coincidence that when Lautaro wasn't playing very well and Dzeko wasn't scoring quite as often, that was when Inter had their worst period of the season. I don't think it's a coincidence that those two periods overlapped. And now that he seems to have come out of that dry spell, they look so much better. Let's kick over to Milan here, who won 2-0 over Genoa. Snapped a 2-game 0-0 streak where Milan just had not been able to score goals. That was not as much an issue in this game because it turns out when you play Blessin, he loves to bless the opponent with a nice victory because as much off the field acclaim as he's getting, I have to say the results have not been super convincing for Genoa, who are in very real danger now of going down. I think it has to be said. I think they're done for this year. But Rafael Leao gets on target with a beautiful volley off a cross from your man Kalulu, of course. And this is the type of win that Milan haven't been getting, that they really needed. They just needed to get over the line, I felt. I didn't think they played particularly poorly in their recent games. I didn't see anything from them that was just dreadful against, Torino, Bologna, but just lack of attacking options and also lack of finishing. I think at times even lack of creativity. You saw some of that melt away in this game, which is big because obviously you're keeping yourself on pace for the title.
I still think that there is a lack of creativity and finishing even in this win. I mean, you're playing a team like Genoa where you can kind of get away with those mistakes. They play Lazio, Roma, Sassuolo, Hellas Verona coming up in the end of the season, and you have to put away chances. Salamaker's had 2-3 chances right in front of goal. He sends them flying into Rosette. Like, come on now. Like it's very obvious that that right side and that number 10 just are. It's a broken record every time Milan plays. You're always saying that because there's no creativity from them. It's either coming from the defensive mids or it's coming from a fullback, right? The striker isn't getting service. Leao got that service because Kalulu went up. That's the only reason.
And Leao made a great back post run too, which hasn't been the case either. I don't think there's been a ton of mobility outside of Leao in that front area because no disrespect to Giroud and Ibra, and when Ibra has been able to play this season, they're not mobile guys anymore. They're good at positioning,
No.
sure, but I don't know that they're making those like curving late back runs because I don't know that they have the speed to do it
Yeah.
anymore
And
because you have to time it so perfectly.
and the only way that like guys like Giroud and Ibra can play better and Milan plays at a higher level is when they have a competent number 10 that can make those offsetting runs when you play the ball up to the striker and they can play them off onto that secondary run and really put pressure. It opens up a lot more space to cut it back to them and then they can finish. Or if you can get wing play on both sides, right? So they don't have to solely focus on Leao. You can get good service in to these towering strikers who can get a head onto the ball or head the ball down to, again, the number 10. So it's really concerning when they don't have that. It's a little odd, to see that Pioli went with a 4-3-3 instead of a 4-2-3-1 like they normally have all season. I'm assuming that's because they don't have a number 10. So they're playing to their strengths and they're playing three midfielders that can kind of hold down the middle of the field. Kessie, Benacer, Tonali. It's a lot more structured there, right? It gives more freedom to the fullbacks to get forward as well because those two outside mids can kind of stay back and cover that space if needed. But it's still concerning for Milan. I mean, even Macias's goal wasn't the most well taken. You could argue it's kind of luck, right? His initial shot was saved and he kind of had to fight for that second chance that he put into the back of the net. I mean, this could have easily been like a 4-0, 5-0 game if everybody else would just put away their chances. I mean, the only good news is that you may not have to play Gabbia for much longer with Kier still, getting back to full health. And then hopefully, that's good with the quality of the teams that they're playing later on in the season. But there's still some glaring issues with Milan and with all the rumors that are going on with, a possible financial takeover, new investors looking to buy the team, maybe money can come in so they can splash big in the summer market, but who knows? But it's concerning for me and for other fans of Milan and for the team themselves. Moving forward with these last 5 games, they've got to play almost perfect. They've got to bring back that form that they had in the beginning of the season because if they don't, second place again. That's what's going to happen.
Pioli was talking a little about that in his interview too, saying he's unsure whether to push them, harder or to lay off them too, because I think also there's a recognition that this team is very much in, and we talked about this last week, in their, how different the table looked this year compared to last year. And Milan have been pretty consistent year on year. What's been better is the defending this season has gotten better. In fact, this is their 6th straight clean sheet, which is very, very impressive when you consider that this team hasn't really spent tons of money on a defender. Like you mentioned, Kier's been out for pretty much the entire season now. And yet they've still had this great defensive record, still a great defensive team. I do think, too, they are a little inexperienced in some ways. They didn't really have a true title race last year, I wouldn't say. It felt like, even by February, they were pretty much out of it. Yep. But this year, if the title's still there for them, they would likely have to win. They have to win at least 4 of the 5, I would say. I don't think Inter's going to run the slate the rest of the way. I don't think they've been that type of team recently. Now, of course, this could be a turn in form for them. But to me, they have not been that type of team this season, really since the turn of the new year to just rip off 5 straight wins. I wouldn't be surprised if they drop points there too. So it is still, I think, very much in Milan's control whether or not they win the title. In fact, if they win, especially if they win all 5, I think they have the title in their hands because I do think Inter's due another poor performance here.
It just matters that Milan gets a win on that same week. All right, that same match day that Inter drops points, Milan has to get points. Whether Inter drops all 3 or drops 2, they have to take that 2-point lead and turn it into at least a 4-point lead because, a 4-point lead because with that extra game in hand, they want to have that comfort of, knowing that if Inter does play that, when they do play that extra game, even if they get that result, the first place is secured. So, I mean, it's good to see that they have been consistent, right? If they finish second again, second place 2 years in a row is good, which means that they're almost there. They're almost there. And you make a good point saying that defensively, they've been playing fine. Tomori is a huge acquisition. He's been playing so consistent all year round. It's just a fact of, they're playing so well, but they're getting tired. And with all the individual errors or lack of finishing up forward, it's almost bound to happen that the defense will get scored on in certain games. And it's just, that's the biggest issue. It's been their issue all season. And the fact that they were able to play so well in the beginning of the season and get this first place lead and kind of hold it for so long, given they did drop a couple times and get back into the lead and all that kind of stuff. But, with the team that they have, it is good. I mean, most fans, when you spoke to them in the beginning of the season, they said top four again, with the fact that we really didn't do anything with the attack other than sign Giroud was, the goal. Get back to the Champions League so that we can, continue getting more money and more funds so that you can make those signings. And then a lot of fans started getting a little diluted because they started playing well, right? And now they're like, okay, if we don't get a win, this season's a disappointment. I don't think it is. I really don't think it's a disappointment because nobody really expected Milan to win this year. Yes, the last 2 years they have held the first place spot for a while, but it's bound to happen that they drop down. So if they get second, it sucks that they lose out to Inter again, but they're the best team in the league. So
I'd like to clip you saying that Inter are the best team in the league.
Well, I'm speaking objectively here. I'm not like.
No, I think that's totally fair.
Most of the time, I do speak subjectively in favor of Milan, but this is one of those conversations where you have to speak objectively, and a lot of fans won't agree with that. You see it I see it on Twitter all the time. You can't be thought of or your opinion can't be taken seriously if you're not speaking of, subjectively in Milan's favor. But, that's kind of how I see it. If they don't fix this or if they don't start getting quality, I don't think Salamakers should play for the rest of the season. At least starting.
That's certainly a good starting point is Salamakers, right? not featuring so heavily in a title chasing team because he is not of that quality.
The 4-3-3 is kind of how they have to go for the rest of the season, because Brahim Diaz just is not it either anymore. And leaving that major hole in the middle of the field is just not ideal for Milan. So I think the 4-3-3 with Kessie, Tonali, and Benacer is the way to go. And then getting Macias on the right, because it just seems that Macias gives more creativity. He can finish in front of goal more than Salamakers can. Salamakers gets himself into good positions, and he does decent on the link-up play, but when he's in front of goal and he gets his chances, it's just not good. And I don't know if it's a lack of confidence. I don't know if it's just his lack of quality. But, also it doesn't help when the fans constantly berate him. And, I mean, they do have good reason too, but it always seems like that player that plays in that number 7 role gets killed by the Milan fans.
Yeah.
All the time. Well, whether it's Suso, whether it's Castillejo, whether it's Salamakers, even Macias to a certain extent. Milan fans are just ripping them apart. And I don't know why, because Milan has never had a quality right winger, ever. Like, even when you think back to when they won the Champions League in 2007, they played a 4-3-1-2. Like, they've never had a winger. Never on the right side. They've either played a striker or somebody else, because they've had Rubinho play both sides, or Ronaldinho or wherever, but they always end up going back centrally. They've never had a right winger. And when the new coaches and stuff have switched the system up and they've played wide now, it's just not the same. And they've never put the money into it. They have to splash it. And that market is so small compared to going for midfielders or strikers or something like that. So, it's tough to get a quality signing. And if you do go for younger talent, who knows how they're going to come around? That's what happened right now, right? Salamakers and Macias. Even Macias isn't young, he's 30. But, when you get those, prospects, do they end up, unfolding into the positive? But it's going to be a tough end to the season for them regardless. And hopefully they can keep up some consistency, because I wouldn't be surprised if they drop down the second.
Yeah, well, considering, speaking of tough ends to the season, Napoli drew today 1-1 with Roma. Frustrating, and this is why, for me, they've been out of the title race. For me, in like my mind, certainly they're still even in it now, considering the points, but just their inability to win these like big, kind of more like emotional, crucial games. One they really needed today to just to keep pace and keep the pressure on. And we saw this against Atalanta. They're just not able to put this together, and it's very frustrating. And a deserved draw. Really, they probably should have lost this game given their performance. I thought Roma were the better team in this one. And Roma, have had a really strong season, honestly, under Mourinho, and they're in the Europa Conference League semifinals now, which is a big deal for them. They could be the first Italian team to win a European trophy in a very long time now. It's interesting, right? Because Napoli now have really struggled. They're 4 points off the top. I personally don't really count them in anymore in terms of really being in the title race. I think. Again, should they win out, which they don't have, they have I would call it a middle of the road schedule, so they certainly can, but they're going to need some help, right, from Inter and Milan to actually win the title now, and I think that's frustrating. I think Spalletti deserves some blame for especially this game too. He has this habit of like turtle shelling late into games, and I think that's gotten them into some trouble. And that's an issue for me for Napoli. But that's a team that I think has got to reassess this summer too, because obviously the big storyline is Insigne, but who knows what's going to happen with Mertens' future. You're probably gonna have to help Osimhen in some way, get him some extra support, and figure some things out. Who knows what departures they might have too. So sure. Napoli, it's a big transition summer for them too, whether or not they're going to continue to push forward and be regular title contenders, or maybe take a step back. Elsewhere in Italy, Cagliari, really important win for them for their survival in Serie A over the weekend. Just want to highlight this because the relegation fight in Italy hasn't been quite as insane as it is in England at times, but they did get a 1-0 win over Sassuolo, which is really, really big for them for staying in the league next season. Right now, they're on 28 points. Venezia is sitting in 18th, the final relegation spot at 22 points. They do have a game in hand, but doesn't seem likely. Salernitana had a shock win over Sampdoria over the weekend as well. Unfortunately, just comes too late in the season, I think, for Salernitana to really stay in. They have a few games in hand, but I just don't see the great escape for them. But Cagliari, the big winners in terms of the actual points and what it does for them in their season for keeping them out of the relegation spot. Let's move to England, shall we, where Newcastle, this was a really fantastic game. There wasn't a ton of Premier League games on of high quality, I wouldn't say, this weekend, because you did have the big three were all playing in the FA Cup semifinals, so some of those bigger ties were postponed. But Newcastle, late winner by Bruno Guimaraes, 2 goals in the game, late diving header to win it. Leicester just in, obviously the Europa Conference League semifinals as well, which is going to be fascinating. But really frustrating season for them, I would say, and Newcastle looking to just build on some momentum for the summer, because we know that they're going to be spending the big dollars now that they are Saudi owned. That's just going to be the way it is, isn't it? Yeah, and the FA Cup, like I had mentioned, we have Chelsea and Liverpool in the final. It's going to be a replay of the League Cup final, which we just had. These two teams have been pretty inseparable this year. It's hard to like through all of the games. It's been incredibly even, decided by the smallest of margins, had to go to a penalty shootout to decide the League Cup. I wouldn't be shocked if you see something similar, in the FA Cup in a few weeks' time. So looking forward to that. And yeah, Chelsea, I thought, pretty well cruised past Crystal Palace, especially in the second half. I thought they took it up a gear that Palace couldn't match. And Liverpool win the rematch against Manchester City. City, a slightly rotated side. Zach Steffen, I don't think helps matters much by letting Sadio Mane just tackle him into the goal. And he didn't do very well for the third one either. But yeah, Liverpool, I think if you're speaking in terms of momentum, certainly could be a little bit of a hit for City, because now obviously no chance of a treble. Of course, they could win still the Premier League and Champions League, which would be fantastic for them. But I do wonder too, like, just losing like that to one of your rivals in a very challenging week in which you played them, and then Atletico Madrid, which is a challenging game in and of itself. What that does maybe to that team mentally, but they're incredibly resilient. I doubt it changes very much. But looking forward to that FA Cup final. It's going to be a classic one. Spurs 0, Brighton 1. Brighton, Just the North London chaos team, right? Because they beat Arsenal, now they beat Spurs. Just introducing a little of anarchy into the mix here for the top four race. They played well in this. I think I've been really impressed at times with Brighton this season. And Leandro Trossard as well, scoring in both of these games against Arsenal and now against Spurs. He must have some kind of real vendetta against both of those clubs. But yeah, I think Graham Potter is someone that I think is going to be discussed a lot about his future and where he ends up. This is just another like quality win under his resume, and I think we've all been banging the table that if Brighton could have just gotten a more reliable striker, where they would be, and I. Almost every club, like in the mid-table and some, near the bottom, will always say that if they just had a better goal scorer. But, like, I don't think it's ever been more true with a team like Brighton, where if they just had someone who could get, like, 12 league goals a season, like, they would be amazing. Like, I imagine, like, Danny Ings at Brighton, and I just think that would have been spectacular. I really think that they're missing that final piece.
I mean, you can see that Spurs is kind of one-dimensional right now. What I mean by that is they attack down one side and one side only. But if you look at their 3-4-3, all of their players that can kind of, aside from Son, that can kind of get goals are all on the right side, or players that can create. Right, Emerson I think is more of a get forward guy than Reguilon, which will kind of sit in there and get forward and participate in link-up play, but also gets back on defense. You got Bennett and Kulusevski on that right side who will, be more active and then look to cut back to Son, who will be the final, goal scorer like Kane. So it makes sense that, someone like Trossard in Brighton's kind of lineup, they can get forward on that counterattack because all of that right side is moving forward in that system. They're kind of one-dimensional in that aspect. If Harry Kane isn't the guy in the center moving the ball around, they're moving it down the right side. So when a team like Brighton, who's very strong on the left, they're going to be able to get down that field and put pressure on the counterattack. So we've talked about Spurs, in the past. This summer is going to be big for them because Conte wants to get his guys and really solidify the team and make it a little more balanced so they can have more attacking options. So whether that is getting a right wing back or a winger, so maybe Reguilon can play in place of Davies, or getting a center back that can kind of play over there. Maybe Conte looks to bring Bastoni in from Inter.
No shot of that. No shot of that.
They'd have to pay bread.
It doesn't help either. This was their first game after Matt Doherty's season-ending injury, and he had been really mercurial for them on that right so far. But yeah, they did 5 shots in this game. Spurs did 0 on target. Just a really tame offensive performance to them, which is surprising when you consider just how good they'd been coming into this game in terms of goal scoring. Kane and Son have been playing so fantastic. So came to a little bit of a halt, but they are still very much in a good position, in a good spot, especially to get top 4.
It's kind of weird for me to see that Bentancur got the captain's armband instead of somebody like Kane.
Did he?
Yeah, at least with what I'm looking at right now. Oh, never mind. Sorry. That C is a clearance off the line. I thought that meant captain. I'm sorry. I lied.
Yeah, Bentancur surprised me too because I wasn't as high on him as I was on Kulusevski, but I think he's been in many ways just as good as Kulusevski has been for Spurs, which is, again, I can't say enough. Just kind of surprising for me when I watched him play for Juventus. So often it felt like he was giving the ball away in such bad positions. But yeah, credit to Brighton for limiting Spurs as well as they did and slowing them down. And we have to credit as well Southampton 1, Arsenal 0, keeping the top 4 race very interesting. Thank you to our South Coast friends in Brighton and Southampton for doing this. The story of this game, too, is Fraser Forster with just some fantastic saves. I can remember the Bukayo Saka one that probably should have found the back of the net, but still great reaction. Just beautiful stuff from him. Yeah, Arteta was like very complimentary of him in the post-game press conference, too, saying that, on another day that they're probably scoring more, and they just had a great key performance. And you get games like this, right, where just the other team's keeper just stands on his head a little bit, and it's going to take a really, really great effort to get it past. That being said, I think Arsenal, this has been a little bit of an issue for them, is their inability to finish goals and looking a little disjointed up top. Didn't help that they didn't have Lacazette for this one due to a COVID test result. And yeah, it's not great for Eddie and Katia either, because this was a good opportunity for him really this entire season, especially but since Aubameyang left. It's been a good opportunity for him to like stamp his claim on being a genuine part of this team going forward, and I just have not seen that. Haven't seen it from him for a while, but this would have been the game, I think, for him to have that type of performance, and he just didn't. And yeah, Arsenal now 3 straight losses. This is a team that not that long ago, it really did feel like top 4 was very much theirs, but they've fallen off that path. Still, you know, they can make it theirs. They can still finish top 4. That's not out of the question for them. And they still have the game in hand against Spurs, in which they could help that make a reality. But it is frustrating, right? They're a young team. They've one of the youngest teams in the league. I think that's part of it. Arteta thinks that as well, and has talked about how there's a lot of pressure on them, and he's trying to soothe that and ease that, and you know, he's trying to create the best, you know, like atmosphere for them and best support system, because they need it, because they're so inexperienced. But I think you see that in games like this sometimes too, where, you know, I think a team more capable, you know, is putting Southampton away, you know, with the chances that they had, and maybe with a little bit more quality and experience, but that just wasn't the case in Southampton. It's a good one for them. They're, you know, they're one of these teams at this stage of the season where you never quite know what type of performance we're going to get for them, because there's really not much for them to play for. They're very comfortably mid-table. They're not getting relegated, and they're not close to European spots. But I thought they played very well.
Yeah, it's a little odd to me that Martinelli and Saka were on opposite sides of the field than they normally are. Martinelli was on the right and Saka was on the left. Martinelli had 5 shots, but I think that if he was on the left, maybe one of them may have gone in. I mean, when you're playing a guy like Forster, who, you know, is a league vet and is playing like that, it's very frustrating. Like you said, 23 shots to 9. I mean, granted, 12 of those shots were off target for Arsenal and 6 were on target, but still, like, that's crazy that they couldn't at least get one into the net. I mean, the quality is there in creating the chances, especially against a team like Southampton. But like you said, not having Lacazette probably really hurt Arsenal because when that seems to happen, it seems like they always depend on their left and right, you know, wingers to try to create all the chances.
Lacazette too is really good for facilitating their play, and I think you missed that. But yeah, I mean, just speaking to overall, you know, the pressure that they applied here, Southampton had 213 total passes. Arsenal had 367 just in Southampton's half alone. They had 655 total, so you know, 3 times the passes completed. They very much did control large portions of this game, just did not have anything to show for it. So that's a frustrating result. I think that's one over time that you start to see less of from teams like this as they grow, as they get better players, as they get experience and develop themselves. You know, you'll see that change a little bit, but a frustrating one nonetheless. And yeah, I mean, it makes top 4 interesting because United have crept back into the conversation just a little bit with their win over Norwich, and Tottenham sitting at 57 points, Manchester United with 54, Arsenal level on them with 54 with a game in hand. West Ham seem off the mark now, especially with their draw over the weekend. They're very much Europa League focused. It certainly seems like they have 52 points, but yeah, it's really between Spurs, United, and Arsenal, as it's been for some time now. It felt like United had fallen off that path a little bit. They face a really tough test with Liverpool tomorrow. That's obviously a very meaningful game for both clubs. Liverpool trying to stay, obviously, in the title race, and you know, United now with an outside chance at making top 4. You know, they're only 3 points behind. They can certainly make that ground up, and that would mean a lot because they do have Erik ten Hag apparently confirmed now to be going there. There'd been a lot of rumors over the last week that was getting close to done. It's, according to at least Fabrizio Romano, a done deal. Here we go. Looking forward to that, and I'm sure we'll break that down. That'll be one of the things we do over the summer, is talking about Ten Hag and how that's going to work. I'm going to say that it probably won't work very well because that has been the history of Manchester United appointments the last few years, is that they swing really hard at guys like this and then don't quite give it the effort that it deserves and end up striking out on them because they don't know how to properly organize their team. But that is a conversation, I think, for another day. We're going to preview this week because we have some big Coppa Italia games to look forward to. We're going to just do a very short roundup, too, of what happened in Europe and look ahead towards there. But Coppa Italia, we got Milan versus Inter tomorrow, which is Tuesday, or today, if you're listening to that. That's 0-0 in aggregate. Everything to play for still. Really looking forward to this one. Again, this is a spot for a cup final, and it's against your most hated rival. So, yeah, plenty to play for both these clubs. It's it's a chance for both of them to have a chance at silverware, and to already have the Supercoppa under their belt. I'm sure they would love to perhaps do a domestic treble this season, and of course Milan will of course want to the very least put an end to that. But yeah, it's a chance for Milan to win some trophy as well. They're still obviously in it with the league, but this is a very tangible result that they could hold for themselves as to what they've achieved as a very young team. And Juventus Fiorentina on Wednesday. Juventus have a 1-0 lead there due to a very, very late goal, despite Fiorentina's great performance in that first leg. And that's an away goal as well, so that's tough. It's hard to see Fiorentina overcoming that, but Juventus have been anything but consistent and amazing really through the course of this whole season. But even when they've been better, in the last 3-4 months, I still think they're a team that can then lose on their day. And Fiorentina have been playing very well recently. They've gotten, I would say, better results than what would just be beating, Juventus. But it is Juventus on the road. That's a challenge. But I think Fiorentina can make something of that.
Yeah, with respect to Milan Inter, this could be a confidence booster or confidence killer moving on into the end of the season. If Milan can get that win over Inter may fall into some inconsistencies, switching the lineup around and all that. And with Milan getting a win, that could give them confidence, playing these bigger teams that they have coming up in the end of the season. So there's a lot riding on that game more than just a spot in a cup final. Juventus and Fiorentina, like you said, Juventus has been very inconsistent, and Fiorentina on a good day can put a few behind the net, or put a few in the net rather. But I can see Juventus moving on to that cup final. I don't know who's going to win the other tie between the Milan clubs, but it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be real interesting moving forward towards the end of the season. I'm almost I kind of want to have an opinion where Milan loses. This way they can just focus on the league, because having that cup final coming in at the end, is the cup final after the end of the season, or is it another midweek game before the end of the season?
Usually it's the last game, I want to say. I will get a firm answer on that. I disagree. I think you want to win everything. I don't think.
Well, it all depends when that game is, because I don't want them getting tired midweek and have the squad rotate against the squad.
It's a trophy.
I know it's a trophy. I know. Maybe that's a loser mentality for me, but no, obviously I want them to win and win everything that they can, because that gives them momentum moving forward with the rest of the games that they have. I don't know. It's a very small part of me is but obviously I want them to get that trophy. They haven't had a trophy in years. So
the final is May 11th.
So that's after
that's in the season, I think.
That's in the season. It doesn't matter. I mean, really, if Milan wins and gets to the final, I think they win the final anyway against either of those two teams. So yeah, let's get a win. Fuck it, let's get a win.
All right, I'm glad you settled on that finally. Yeah, you always want your teams to get into finals. Come on, they're one of the most storied clubs in Europe. It'd be good to see them winning trophies again, competing for leagues again, being back in Champions League. I think it means a lot for Milan, and Inter have been very good, and especially in recent history have had the better limelight. Good for them to take some of that back, I would say. Champions League, we have to look forward to. We were half confirmed when we recorded last week on who would be in the semifinals. Now we have it all. The picture's very clear to us. Real Madrid versus Manchester City on one side of the bracket, and Liverpool versus Villarreal on the other side of the bracket. Manchester City versus Madrid is going to be fantastic. I think these are the types of ties that you really love Champions League for. Madrid, who didn't play particularly amazing against Chelsea, not particularly amazing against PSG, found themselves here based off of some experience and just some voodoo magic, of course. And Manchester City survived Atletico Madrid's onslaught and personal attacks and affronts on their character. Not without some damage, though. João Cancelo is going to be suspended for the first game. Kyle Walker has a slight injury, which could be a concern for them. We'll see whether or not he's available. And Kevin De Bruyne had some stitches coming out of that game. He wasn't able to play in the FA Cup game, but I'd imagine, you're looking at 2 weeks to play that, or about a week and a half now at this stage. Probably should be available, but that's clearly like the glamour tie. Liverpool versus Villarreal can't be understated, but Gerard Moreno did pick up a hamstring injury. He's obviously really important to what Villarreal do, key part of that attack. If he's not available, that's going to be a struggle, but this is an experienced team in Villarreal. They have some Premier League players that I'm sure we've all heard of. They also have Raul Albiol, who is a just absolute veteran. Guy's played in many, many Champions League games, lest we forget, a former Real Madrid man, and a Napoli man, so he's been in high leverage situations, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that team plays, because they've been counted out so much. They were counted out against Bayern, and then if you go back to last season in the Europa League, no one gave them a shot of reaching the final, let alone beating Manchester United in it. And they also took Chelsea very close in the UEFA Cup, in the Super Cup there. So I really like what Villarreal do. I think Liverpool have to be considered the favorites, though. It seems like a path towards the final is certainly there for them. I find it very hard to pick between Madrid and City. Part of me thinks City is certainly the better team, and I think they've played better, and I think they've really gotten here based off of results and performance, whereas Madrid just have, as we've talked about so often, they have that just kind of air of excellence about them and have this ability to get through ties even maybe when they don't deserve to. And it feels like it's just very much that. Karim Benzema has just had a fantastic season. He's scoring late winners in the league. He's scoring late winners in the Champions League. He's scoring hat-tricks. It just feels like he's especially someone that could give City's backline a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, Benzema has just been absolutely electric the last few weeks, both in Europe and with the league, and he's been a vital part to Real Madrid's success. And if he continues playing the way that they're playing right now, I wouldn't be surprised if seeing Real Madrid lift the Champions League trophy at the end of this tournament. But I want to focus more on that City Atletico tie. It was very ironic to see Atletico fans and the club, I think it was the club president actually, right, complaining that City parked the bus and just sat back and just like, isn't that what Simeone's entire system is? Like, sit back, park the bus, and catch your team on a counter. Like, it was very ironic and funny to me that like that's what they were complaining about the whole time.
In the interest of remaining neutral, as I'm always trying to do, I will simply say this. As someone who's had to watch our team play Atletico Madrid, both of us have had to do that this year, but in the past, I don't think anyone was upset necessarily that Atletico Madrid got done the way they did. Nope. That's it. But nope. I think what's been lost in that game is after the red card, they actually had their best chances of the game. The last 10, 15 minutes, they almost sent it to extra time, which I really wanted to happen because I just think that would have been just spectacular for the drama, and certainly not because we played City 4 days later in the FA Cup semifinal. I didn't want them to have to play an extra 30 minutes of very intense football, of course, but I did think City, that was a big prove at point two, though. To get out of a tie like that, out of an atmosphere like that, is a huge, huge feather in their cap. I have a very hard time picking a winner out of this. I can't help but feel that the winner of this is probably the favorite in the final, even if Liverpool do make it, just because of if it's Real Madrid, I don't find many people would be betting against them. They're obviously European royalty. They've done this a lot. Them.
Huh? You have money on them.
I do. I do have a bet on Real Madrid from some weeks ago. Got them at plus 1,400. Thank you very much. Because as soon as they got a matchup against PSG, I was like, I knew that these people were going to think that PSG had a chance, which they didn't because they love to collapse. So yeah, I guess I do have some incentive in seeing Madrid at least make the final. But if it's against Liverpool, I don't know what I do there exactly. But and City I think would probably be favored against Liverpool on a neutral venue. They were for the semi-final, I believe, before we knew that they were going to be rotated. But does feel like, pretty good chance that the winner comes out. Can't discount Liverpool, of course. They could certainly win, and they have done before. Let's just talk real briefly about Europa League, because we have some tasty matchups here too. Leipzig versus Rangers, West Ham versus Frankfurt. Frankfurt upsetting Barcelona. I think to a lot of people's surprise too, because Barcelona had been a team in really good form, playing really well under Xavi, and I thought didn't play terribly in the first leg, but we're probably lucky to escape with just a 1-1 draw. I thought we're pretty much outplayed at home, where there was 30,000 Frankfurt fans, and there's an entire investigation now into exactly how that happened. But yeah, West Ham, Frankfurt, that's fantastic. You're going to see one of those teams in the final, and you're going to see one of Leipzig and Rangers in the final as well. Rangers, who just advanced to the Scottish Cup final. I watched the second half of that over the weekend, which was spectacular, but hard to pick this one. Hard to pick who's coming out here.
I'm rooting for Frankfurt. Because
I think a lot of people are.
There's a Norwegian on that team that I have a soft spot for. So, yeah, we're rolling with the German. We're rolling with one of the 2 German squads left in the tournament.
I have to say, the last time I did this, I attached myself to Frankfurt, and they played a London club in the semifinals of the Europa League. It did not go great for me because Chelsea won and then eventually beat Arsenal in the final. So that's a challenge. Obviously, they'll have to overdo some history, but Frankfurt have been fantastic to watch. Really enjoying them. West Ham, though, I mean, they've had an amazing season, and I think it's even more interesting, too, when you consider how far off of it they were a few years ago, especially when they brought David Moyes back. And, they really didn't seem like a team that had this kind of bright future in them, but here they are, on the verge of a European final, and that's massive. And Leipzig, it would be a huge, watershed moment for them, because it'd be their first trophy, and it'd be a European one at that, which is a fantastic mark to set for themselves. And Rangers, I mean, they've sort of turned themselves into like a cup team a little bit, and they're a little off it in the league this season, but to even make a European final for them, I think would be massive in terms of putting them back in that kind of stature in that class. Yeah, I think every team here has something to really play for in terms of not just the trophy itself, but I think there's a little bit of prestige that would be bestowed upon them that some of these teams have lost, or some of these teams looking for that kind of acclamation for the very first time. That's all we got tonight. That's all we got to get through. Anything to say before we get out of here?
I just want to shed some light on the Conference League semifinal legs as well. Leicester City and Roma. That's going to be an electric matchup. I mean, Roma kind of put their foot down after getting made fun of constantly on Twitter after losing to Bodo Glimt 2-1, and they won 4-0. So they're playing Leicester. Leicester City is one of the favorites to win the whole thing. So, that's going to be a very interesting matchup, especially with the form that Roma's been in recently. On the other end, Feyenoord, Marseille. Most, casual fans would probably say that Marseille is going to win that leg, but you cannot count out Feyenoord. They had a tough matchup against Slavia Praha where, they had a 3-3 draw, and then they put up another 3 goals in the second leg. So they're putting up goals. They're having an electric offense, and Marseille was like both of their games were kind of decided by 1 goal. So it's going to be very interesting to see who ends up in the final there. Don't count that out. Those are just as big at matchups as all the other 2 European competitions that we talked about. So
yeah, inaugural season too. So whatever club wins it will always have that too, that they were the first. And any of those teams too, I think will have a huge claim. I think Roma fans would take it very far that they won a European trophy in the only Italian club.
I do not want that to happen.
First Italian club to do that in 12 years. Right, I'm sure they would love to let people know about that one. Yeah, for Leicester, it'd obviously be a huge moment for them too, especially hilarious because Brendan Rodgers pretended like he didn't know that this competition even existed when they got knocked out of Europa League. So, in Marseille, right? Obviously, they were in a Europa League final not that long ago either. And obviously second in Ligue 1 and will be fighting for that. Feyenoord, similar position right there, where they've had a lot of European history too. I think Feyenoord can be the first team to win the Champions League, Europa League, and now the Conference League. So they'll have a really good shot at that. I can't imagine many teams will ever really have that opportunity, because I don't know how many teams really would have won Champions League, Europa League, or the European Cup and UEFA Cup, and then have the opportunity to play Conference League. But anyway, right? Anyone you can make history, make it happen.
One last thing I want to talk about before the end. I just want to make a comment. Good riddance to Atletico Madrid because they dealt with karma and it finally caught up to them in this matchup against City. All the fans were complaining about a wrongful penalty call or something, I think, in City's favor. Maybe a handball or something like that. But the only reason that they were in that position in that matchup was because of a handball that was not called on Lamar in the matchup against Milan. So, good riddance, Atletico Madrid. Karma caught up to you finally. See you later.
Can't help but agree there, actually, now that you mention it. Good riddance, Atletico Madrid. That's all we got for you. We'll see you next week. We got some big Serie A games over the weekend, too, and Premier League games to look forward to recapping. We'll see where the title race stands in both leagues now. Until then, though, hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoy yourself. Have a safe week, and we'll talk to you next time.